So good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking a few minutes to spend with me. This is the slide deck I use for the full breakout session. I'll try to speak faster than I normally do because I know we've only got 20 minutes together. I got cut off last time in my 20-minute because I went 40 minutes and I got cut off, so I'll just pull over to the right if you folks have any questions after. And it's not the coolest swag ever, but I've got a couple XL Azure Stack t-shirts, never been worn. Pay particularly close attention to a few things. I'm going to make sure that I iterate a few times to you all when it comes to updating and servicing Azure Stack. If you get the questions right, I'll throw you the t-shirt, and again, probably not the coolest thing you ever got, but it's a couple things. So again, my name's Justin Incarnato. I'm a program manager on the Azure Stack team, and I own the Update Resource Provider, which is the built-in native fully orchestrated provider that exists in multi-node. It exists in ASDK as well, but it will never run in the single node because there's nowhere for the VMs to go. So don't expect it to run in ASDK. It will run on the multi-nodes. Again, it's native. This is my Twitter handle, so all the updates that come out, I'll release out here. And then for all of our documentation, you can go to this AKA, and it'll take you to the guides as well. So here's the agenda. Again, hello, good morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the problem space, what we built, how to manage updates. I'll flip back over to the UI and show you how what it looks like and how simple it is to determine what updates are available to you and how to invoke them, how to monitor the progress, and look at the different high-level steps that we have. We're looking ahead, more information, things that we've heard from our customers. Hey, Justin, we'd like to have this, we'd like to have that. These are things that we're looking ahead, and then I'll flip back over the demo and I'll show you guys what that looks like. So the problem space today, and I'll keep this short because a lot of you have been in IT probably for a long time. Some of you who are new to IT, welcome to IT. But any of those who have been in IT space, there's a couple things, especially the top bullet, right? Security is paramount. I mean, if you read any of the newspapers or any of the online documentation, everybody's kind of getting their you-know-what's handed to them. And so security is paramount. And so each month you can expect updates for Azure Stack because we will take the security payload that we get for Windows Server, stuff it into a PNU package, and give it out to our MAS customers. That's not the only collateral that's in the update packages because we also update the bits that compose Azure Stack itself. Everything from all the agents and all the codes that live on the physical hosts themselves, the service fabric layer that hosts all of our runtimes, CRP, NRP, SRP, URP, insert your RP here. We have 4 different service fabric rings, so we'll not only update the service fabric runtime, but the application that lives in service fabric plus the underlying OS. So we'll be updating all of the physical hosts, all of the virtual machines that constitute our infrastructure management. I think there's about 26 or so VMs that constitute that, all the way through our control plane. And so the VMs that you use from PowerShell, CLI, or the administration portal have a VM that enter, and there's also 2 for the tenant space as well. So the tenant portal has 2 VMs, so we'll service those one at a time. The administration portal has 1 VM, so when we're updating that VM in the 7 or 8 minutes it takes to update that virtual instance, because it's a singleton, right, you will lose the ability to manage for about 7 to 8 minutes because now your tenant workloads are up, but the administration portal is unavailable at that time. So these are things to keep in mind. Some of the things we also have as well, keeping it functional, adding functionality. I look at the URP as, even though it's the update resource provider, I think about it as the umbilical because we are the umbilical that keeps things from Azure into Azure Stack. And the URP is the way that they get there. Aside from the security updates, bug fixes, but also new features and functionalities. A lot of the questions that we have here, I think, are not foreign to any of you. What to install, where to install it, where do I download it, what's the order, have things been validated together, do I need any additional tools, if the tools that I need are from multi-vendors, who do I call if there's an issue, what if the update breaks, who do I call? So we've got a really good relationship with our OEM partners. A few of you are out in the audience today. One call, one support case. We work on the back end hard with our OEM partners to make sure that you don't call in twice, re-explain your issue, get routed to the next level. Well, it's one call, one package, one signature, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have service continuity. The last thing that we want to do is prevent those meters from spinning so you all can pay us and then you can collect from your customers as well, right? Focus on other aspects of the business rather than worrying about update. Because remember now, in Azure Stack, the paradigm's a little bit different, right? In Azure, you don't need to worry about the monitoring space. You don't need to worry about patching. You don't need to worry about the FRU scenarios when you have to replace a particular field replaceable unit, right? In Azure Stack now, there's an administration portal where you have all those artifacts. You have all those functions that you need to do. And so, again, focus on other aspects of the business. That's the high-level goal. So what we built, we've got a built-in dependency-aware orchestration engine that updates the physical host, the infra VMs, service fabric, the microservices that live there. No outsider tooling required. The URP is native to Azure Stack, and I'll show you what that looks like in the UI. It supports disconnected mode. A lot of the customers that use Azure Stack are using it because they're on a literal submarine. We have other customers that have trackside instances of Azure Stack. We have other customers that have Azure Stack on a cruise ship because once they reach a certain plane, they lose communication. And so a lot of the customers, whether it be data sovereignty, air-gapped, Azure's not available in their region, they can use Azure Stack for that reason. And so we want to make sure the update functionality supports the disconnected scenario. So keep in mind, you have to do a couple things. We'll release updates posted on Microsoft.com. When you purchase Azure Stack from your specified vendor, your preferred vendor, because we have quite a few now, you can actually go and get a notification from them and they'll say, hey, by the way, Jason, an update's available, go get it. Get it from Microsoft. And what you have to do, because the traditional administrative role that you and I have been used to for the last 10, 15, 20 years is different in Azure Stack. Right? You can't fly into the Hyper-V hosts and get into Task Manager and Process Manager and kill processes and move things around and change ACLs and file shares and permissions. Right? You're not going to be doing that in Azure Stack. Everything that you need to do from the management portal. Unless you're a tenant, then you're on your user portal. But in the management portal, we need to be able to ingest the updates into Azure Stack. And so what you have to do is you have to go into containers, use a very specific container account, and ingest it through the blob service. Blob service then takes that artifact and its metadata.xml, assigned executable, and the corresponding bin files that make up the actual payload, right? The Windows Server payload, our NuGet packages. You'll ingest these through the blob service, and what they do is the URP will then look at that blob service and move that collateral over to an infrastructure file share. The URP then looks in that particular file share and parses metadata.xml, and it gives you important properties like the name of the package, the size of the package, the support package. Like if Graham were to look at an update from us, he would say, well, yeah, I'm interested in this update. I can click on it and read what's in it, known issues, any payload that's particularly interesting to you, and you can make that determination, right? And this is cloud, so we want you to stay current, but we also understand in certain scenarios, maybe end of the year scenarios if you're in retail, right? You can't even log on to the production servers, right? The maintenance windows are out of band. No thanks, right? It's not going to happen. So you can defer updates for 3 months and still be in support. Here's the caveat. You can defer those 3, but know that our updates are not cumulative. So if you need to defer and some new feature comes along and you're at 1710, year, month, and something cool comes out in 1801, well, guess what you're going to be doing? You're going to take 1711, you're going to take 1712, and then you can take 1801, right? So keep in mind, you can defer, but there is a, for lack of a better term, a sequential deferral tax, if you will. So keep that in mind. Operators determine maintenance windows and update install time, right? You all make the call. When you ingest the update, it can just sit. You all go into the portal, click update now, right? Watch the monitor, watch the progress. Establish maintenance windows with your customers just like you do for everything else, right? We take advantage of things like live migration, putting servers into maintenance mode, right? Rebalancing storage once that host comes back online. And people often ask me, well, Justin, how long does it take? Well, it just depends, right? There's 2 vectors when it comes to how long it takes. And on average, we see that it takes about 2 hours per physical host. And that's, again, depends because we know 2 things, right? We know payload because we've stuffed these updates into these packages. In the Windows Server update, the latest cumulative one right now, does anyone know how big it is? It's like 1.2 gig, right? It's cumulative, and it goes on all the physical hosts and all 26 of our infrastructure VMs, right? From the domain controllers all the way through the service fabric nodes. We also have about 750 megs worth of NuGet packages, right? All of our collateral for Azure Stack, the compute resource provider, the network resource provider, the storage resource provider, the health resource provider, the backup, right? All of those are constituted NuGet packages as well. So those packages right now today are about 2 gigs in size. Our OEM partners will build extension packages as well for drivers, for example, right? They'll hand those over to us, we sign the envelope, hand it back, and they let you all know as their customers, hey, by the way, there's an OEM update available as well. So that's the software, that's the drivers. The third part, the firmware. Each of our OEM partners has an optional, I don't know how optional is anymore, hardware lifecycle host. Dell's is different from HPE's, is different from Lenovo's, right? Everyone is a little different on how they do the firmware updating process. Know that things like the firmware are managed through the HLH, and also the switches. That will be guidance provided by your OEMs as well. All right, so keep those things in mind. Again, you'll determine when and where to install. This is driven by us in the URP, and they're signed. And when you think about things like, well, Justin, why does it take 2 hours per physical host? Well, there's a lot going on, and I've tried to capture this in as high level as possible. We want to make sure, if we have a 4-node system, we have to think about things like reserve, right? And so we don't want you to create more VMs that can be loaded up on 3 of the hosts, right? Because a node may just go down for whatever reason. A node is absolutely going to get bounced when we perform an update on it. So if we've got a 4-node system, right, U4 in the front, and we start with this guy, we're going to evacuate, putting that node into maintenance, right? And we're going to tell all the tenant workloads, even the subscription 0 ones, which are our infrastructure VMs, we're going to say, hey, go somewhere else, right? We want that to be graceful. We hope that it's graceful. Sometimes it's not. And so we have things like the force drain parameters attached as well, right? We'll either try to live migrate gracefully, we'll try to do quick next. If quick works, that's great, because we suspend, right, pause, bring it over. This is hyperconverge, and bring it up on a new node. Worst case, we have to power that VM off. And I've seen 99 times out of 100, if you can't power it off gracefully, you're most likely not going to be able to power it on gracefully, right? But we've got all these checks and balances in place to do the best we can with making sure live migration is just a smooth process. So when this guy comes back online, we want to do things like health check it on the front end, make sure it's in a state that it can take the update successfully, right? Cluster's good, WMI's good, WinRM's humming along nicely, right? All the different characteristics and personalities that are unique to that physical host. Again, enter maintenance mode, do the live migrations. When this host comes back online, because we're using spaces, right, we need to rebalance storage. And so on an Azure Stack instance where you have 400 VMs, right, the IOPS it's going to queue is a lot larger than IOPS for just 20 VMs. And so again, that's another variable you've got to consider. Workloads, right? Live migrating 200 VMs is a very different physics problem than live migrating 20 VMs. And so that's to keep in mind as well. So when this guy comes back online, before we go to kneel, right, we're going to make sure that the virtual disks are healthy, storage is rebalanced properly. The same similar health checks that we did on the front end of the update, we're going to do on the back end of the update, because the last thing we want to do is move on to Neil from Mike and start servicing Neil before Mike's healthy again, because then Mike comes back online, he's ready for business, right? VMs can land on him as well. If we moved on to Neil without checking Mike, we've broken reserve if something goes wrong now. In the 4-node scenarios, reserve is a little tighter, right? When we get into increments of 8s and 12s, reserve is not so much of an issue. Affinity, anti-affinity, right? With placement, not so much of an issue in the larger systems. It is going to be an issue on a 4-node. If I've got a 4-node SQL guest cluster, node 1, 2, 3, 4, when I service this one, at some point I need to be soft about my anti-affinity. And I'll have VMs 1 and 2 of that 4-node guest cluster on one particular host, right? Not something I'm super comfortable with. right? And so we want to make sure that that host comes back online, it's ready for business again, and we can get the VMs spread across the host as they should be. So a 4-node system, right? Amazing that our team with our brilliant engineers, right, were able to take Azure and put it on a 4-node system to begin with. But there's a lot of moving parts, particularly in the update space. So we have a lot of checks and balances. We want to make sure that things go along nicely. Again, OEMs manage our driver updates. In the HLH, the hardware lifecycle host, that's that 5th node, if you will, right, that our OEMs manage their firmware from. So managing updates, right? We'll go download and import the update, get an OEM notification. I'll blast it out on my Twitter feed as well to say, hey, 1710's available, 1711's available, 1712's, and this, again, the version string on Azure Stack is major version, minor version, year, month, day, .build. And you'll see that string in the demo I'll show you guys. Review important properties, right? There's a metadata XML that's associated with these packages that says, here are the prerequisites, right? Remember I told you that sequential thing. Here's a support URL where you can read more about it. You're like, yeah, Justin, great. Well, why do I care about this update? Why should I take it, right? Read about it. I'll publish one for every update that we have. Very similar to the Windows Update page for Windows Server, where it has the main parent page and then all the tabs show the monthly updates that get released. I'll do very similar for Azure Stack. Talk to your customers and set the appropriate maintenance window. Again, these are those 2 vectors we talked about. We know this one, right? We know payloads, but what we don't know is workloads. So some of the future things we're looking at, if you all buy Azure Stack and you opt in to send us telemetry data, well, I'm collecting very specific information about the update resource provider. And so being able to come back and say, hey, Mike, I see based on your system, you're usually at like 50% utilization on your system. It shouldn't take the full 2 hours for physical hosts. It actually should take about 1 hour and 15 minutes based on your characters. Now, Darren, you're fully utilized, right? You're maxed out. I'm able to come back to you and say, hey, you are going to take the full 2 hours per host based on your utilization. Again, because we need to live migrate all those VMs 2 by 2 from host to host. So collecting that telemetry data. So if you're able to opt in based on your business policies and requirement, opt in. I'll collect that data and try to make a better update experience for you. Install and update progress. I'll show you what that looks like. Repeat every month. I'm going to give you these update packages, right? Especially the security posture we have in the world today, there's really no way around it, right? Patch Tuesday every month for Windows Server. The 2nd Tuesday of every month is the B release. That contains all the security payload new for that month, plus the previous month's features and fixes, which lands on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, right? So that's the C release. And think about MAS like a D release. So we'll get the Patch Tuesday security payload on the B with the previous month's C, and we'll call that our D, if you will. So we'll have 2 weeks out from Patch Tuesday to release that. Now, if there's a 0-day exploit, nasty exploit that comes out, WannaCry v3 that, made us all kind of cry a little bit. WannaCry v3 comes out, I'm going to turn around a P&U package for MAS to you all within 72 hours. We have some excellent OEM partners as well that are held to the same standard. They will release those in 72 hours also. Ingest them into your portal and run them as soon as possible. But that's my guarantee to you. I'll make sure that we have those released to you all. Again, the 3-month deferral policy. You can defer, absolutely, but no, if you call into support and you're more than 3 months behind, they go, oh yeah, they'll empathize with you, but then they'll say, hey Darren, catch up a little bit and then call me back. Right, so try to stay out of that situation if you can. Again, we know it's hard to avoid sometimes. That's why we've given you 3 months. So if you're not as comfortable with the UI or you prefer PowerShell, we've got a robust set of commandlets as well. You can get the properties. What version am I on per my region? What updates do I have available? Run a particular update or look at how you've done historically in the update space. Here's the location where you can actually go get these modules and play with them. You can use these on OneNode as well. Again, OneNode won't invoke an update, but you can actually play with all the administrative commandlets. Again, some folks, and you'll enter through that top of rack, right? The administration VM, right? ARM, That's your ARM instance. For PowerShell, UI, or CLI. The update package composition, right? When you download these artifacts, you'll import the signed exe, any corresponding bin files, and then again the metadata that expresses the payload. And what they look like, how are they composed? I've put kind of our rough sizes here. You got the package itself, the latest cumulative update from Windows Server, right? That thing's about 1.2 gig in size. You'll have an N directory, which just stands for our NuGet directory that hosts all the NuGet packages for all the Azure Stack specific software. You'll have the and that's CRP, NRP, SRP. You'll have a custom action plan that says, here's what I'm going to run, and here's the order. So when you click on an update in the UI, there's about 28 high-level steps that you'll see today. The first thing we do is update the updater, right, like a smart setup, if you will, to make sure that any updates that we have for the update engine itself go first, and then we'll start iterating through the physical host. We'll start iterating through the control plane. We'll start iterating through the different VMs, iterating through the service fabric. Again, not just the service fabric runtime, but the apps that live in the service fabric ring, and also the underlying OS that constitute those service fabric rings themselves, right? 3 nodes per ring, 4 rings, 24 applications across the Azure Stack real estate. And then our friend metadata.xml. I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions after the show. We've got 2 t-shirts to give out. Here's what the metadata looks like. Probably not the most interesting slide you've ever seen in your life, but you can see all the properties. Major version, minor version, year, month, day, build number, right? And that expresses the version. Again, prerequisites, right? I need to install 17.10 before I can go on to 17.11, right? These are sequential because they're not cumulative. We know that's a bit of a pain point, and we are working on that. Know that that's one of the things. And then minver required. Our OEMs can say, you know what, I want to release this driver package to you, because when we take a driver update from them, just like we do for the software, we're going to DISM inject the driver into the OS image. So in the scenario where node 4 dies for whatever reason, and we rebuild it and it comes back online, it's level with the other nodes in the cluster, right? Including the drivers, and that's in the kind of the FRU scenario, right? So we want to make sure that those are level. OEMs can declare a min version. They can say, hey, I've got this, an arbitrary version. I've got this 1.4 package that has this driver in it. But I want it to only be available for Azure Stack customers at 17.12 or higher, right? Otherwise, their test matrix could get way out of control, and maybe they have declared that this particular driver version needs to be floating with this particular OS version. We won't have the same dependency. We'll release the updates, and you can install them independent of your OEM version. And we've engineered it that way. We don't want to ever block you from taking security updates regardless of what your OEM version is well, right? So you can take those at any time. This is the order. All the steps. We'll update the cloud, iterate through the seed rings, and at the end of the day, this last step is incrementing the version, right? So these are all the little steps. And when you run this in the UI, when you click on an update, it'll say installing, and if you click on that installing, it'll show you that top level progress to not only give you the steps that it succeeded with, but also the steps it may have failed with, and then the steps that it's currently running. If it fails, you're going to be in a scenario where that's going to generate a support ticket, I think 99 times out of 100. Because at that point, some host bug checked, or some host couldn't live migrate its payload, or some host didn't boot properly. Right? There's a number of scenarios that could happen, and at that point you've got to go into the privileged endpoint, work with your CSS counterparts, resolve that issue, and then rerun the update. And it's a proper checkpointed workflow, so if it dies at step 22, it's going to pick up at step 22 next time you run it when you do a resume. Right? But that's a support call, unfortunately, because something's gone pretty wrong with the update process. Again, that's the list that we go through. Looking ahead, again, monthly security payloads, feature updates. I've got asks for customers to say, hey, great, if I am connected, and a lot of times with Azure Stack you're not connected, but if I am, can the URP go outbound and say, oh, I'm running version 17.11. Do you have anything on the Moo catalog for me? Oh, great, there's a 17.12. Download it, ingest it through Blob, and just do all that automatically, present it to me. allow me to set a maintenance window. So if I am connected and if an update is available and I go download it and it falls inside of my maintenance window, it will just run it for you. And so that's some of the features and functionality. After we solve the cumulative, I don't want to say problem, opportunity, we'll move on to the scheduling. Again, if you all can opt into sending us telemetry data, we'd greatly appreciate it because we can make it better. Here's where you can go for more information. There's my Twitter handle again. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is a portal that we have that we did for our demos. You can see, remember we talked earlier about the different management functions that we have that you wouldn't have as an Azure customer, right? In Azure Stack, you all are now operators of this, right? You need to manage your updates. You need to manage your plans, offers, subscriptions. You need to look at your resource provider health. You need to look at your alerts and integrate your alerts with Nagios or SCOM, right? Whatever you need to do. You can manage this through PowerShell as well. Look at the health of your clusters, right? You can manage all this because you need to. Syndicate your marketplace items, right? All those things you do in Azure differently in Azure Stack. And we built this UI using Azure's code, but it's a little different, right, from a management function. So an update's available. I click on this, and what it does is it's actually going through and parsing the metadata.xml file, and it's going to present me with a version. And this could say, you know, your favorite OEM here, or Microsoft. It'll show you the name of the package, again, year, month, date, app build. State that it's in, prerequisites that it might have, the size of the package, and this is just a test blank that I have for demo purposes. Don't be misled, they're a lot bigger than that. Date installed, once they get installed, because you can toggle by available updates, installed updates, right? There's some filtering you can do, because after a while this list is going to get pretty big. And you may get an ask from your security folks, hey, have you taken 1711 yet? You can look back in the portal and say, yeah, I have. It took about 6 hours to run, and this is when we finished it, right? Support path, click on that. That actually redirects to aka.ms/Azure Stack Update, where you can read all about where the packages are, known issues, what's in them, and as well as that's the link to our online documentation for how to ingest them through the portal, where the logs are. Because when you run these packages, and there's still a few more demos left, this is what it looks like. There's the files that we have to import. That's what the blob service import. If you've worked with blobs and tables and containers, that's nothing foreign to any of you. Update shows is available once you do that. Once you run it, it toggles us to in progress. Shows us the update run details. Right, and from here we can see, okay, it's updating the updater because it's invoked a cloud update action plan. It's going to roll through those 28-ish steps. And at this point, you can download the full logs and look at the entire action plan and see right where it's at. Okay, and I've got an ask out to my devs that actually shows me a / here. Graham, I think you filed that feedback. So you guys can thank Graham in the back for that one. Shows a / and then the number of steps. Great, I've completed step 4. Well, how many steps are there? Right, you can download the full logs and count. Or I'd like to see like a / that shows, okay, 8 of 24, 9 of 24, whatever that number looks like. Again, you can download the full logs and refresh this portal at any time to see the current status. Once it's done, the rack goes to applied successfully, and you see that we went from the August 28th build, whatever, to whatever date that is, September 18th. Right, so that's how we iterate through, and this will stay in that state. Once you import another update, this toggles back to update available, and you run it when you need to. Yeah, and I think, am I a little bit over time? I don't know, sorry. I tried to condense that as best I could, but that's the update experience. That's how we update Azure Stack, and hopefully I've given you why we update Azure Stack and how frequently. So real quick, what's the name of the file that expresses all the properties about an update package? Metadata.xml. Can you pass that back to that guy, please? What is our deferral policy? How many months? 3 months. I think I saw this guy first. All right. Sorry. But There's a box of these shirts if you go over to the Expo Center in the Azure Stack team. I know that doesn't make giving them away that cool, but those are the two. I literally gave you the shirt off my back. I didn't wear them though, so those are for y'all. But any questions? And then Carlos, am I okay on time? Okay. I don't know who's next, but I'll wait for him or her to come up. Any questions? Yeah? Yeah? Thanks for coming, folks. I appreciate it. Thank you.